After 2 days of Cold War, Bloomer finally admitted that he, as the top brother, rewarded 20,000 yuan saved by Willow to a female anchor. Willow was furious. Bloomer casually called out this damn name, still expecting him to late bloomer? He's already in his 40s, and after resigning from the security company, he does nothing. Either he gets drunk with some unknown friends, or he sleeps at home until midday, as if he has already chosen to settle down ahead of time. Willow worked hard, managing a clothing store. In recent years, with the impact of the pandemic and online competition, the clothing store's business was far from what it used to be. However, she was diligent. In her free time, she did some semi-finished processing work for an online store, and her usual income was enough to make ends meet. The 20,000 yuan that Willow saved was intended for Ian. You see, with such a chaotic employment situation, Ian graduated without a clear plan for the future. So, saving some money to be prepared, she didn't panic. But now, it's not just about being flustered or not. That damn Bloomer, for those women wriggling in front of the live broadcast, actually rewarded the entire 20,000 yuan. With things at this point, Bloomer was no child. So, the money he rewarded was not coming back. Willow scolded him fiercely a few times. Unexpectedly, not long after, Bloomer, with a troubled face, asked Willow for money. When asked what he needed the money for, he hesitated. Sometimes he said investment, sometimes he said it was for a friend. After a while, when it was all said and done, Willow was completely bewildered. This Bloomer actually took the money and rewarded that female anchor again. And this time, it was borrowed money at a high interest rate. Willow had murderous thoughts towards Bloomer. She had no money to help him repay the debt. They were in a second marriage, and Ian was her own son. She had to prioritize her son. She issued a stern warning that whoever borrowed money had to repay it. If Bloomer couldn't pay back the money, it served him right even if his limbs were chopped off. Frightened, Bloomer, with tears streaming down his face, begged Willow. He said if he couldn't repay the money, those people after him were not to be trifled with, and he might disappear at any time. At the same time, he gambled and swore that this was his last time. He couldn't resist the charm of the female anchor this time. If he offended again, he would face the consequences. As the pleading continued, Willow did consider forgiving Bloomer, but she didn't have the money herself. In desperation, she approached her elder brother and borrowed 20,000 yuan, finally helping Bloomer close this troublesome debt. During that period, Bloomer behaved well. Occasionally, he would help Willow manage the clothing business in her store or prepare meals at home for when Willow returned. Just when Willow thought Bloomer had settled down and was contemplating helping him find a job through her brother, Bloomer made a big mistake again. If it weren't for those debt collectors chasing him home, Willow wouldn't have known that Bloomer had the audacity to borrow 200,000 yuan at a high interest rate. This time, it wasn't just about borrowing money, he might have to mortgage his house. What infuriated Willow even more was that she had long suspected Bloomer's claims of rewarding anchors. A person who couldn't be bothered to watch short videos was suddenly addicted to watching live broadcasts. This time, Bloomer hung his head and admitted he lost it all in gambling. Willow had thoughts of sending him to jail. With a debt of 200,000 yuan, the debt collectors frequently visited Willow's clothing store, though they remained calm and didn't adopt the usual aggressive approach. They even waited at the entrance of Willow's store, ordering takeout for themselves. At first, Willow confronted them with a cold demeanor, but as they continued to block the store every day, she began to feel uneasy. Gradually, her anger subsided, realizing that it was Bloomer's fault for owing money. The debt collectors had a legitimate reason to demand repayment. They didn't mention interest, only asking Willow to clear the principal. They didn't resort to violence, and when Willow called the police, there was little they could do. This prolonged situation wore Willow down in less than 2 months. She decided to sell the clothing store, offering a lump sum of 400,000 yuan, including inventory and the store's foundation. After putting up a sign, a few inquiries came in, but selling the store proved challenging. After negotiating, one potential buyer showed considerable interest but could only offer 300,000 yuan at most. Considering the 300,000 yuan could settle Bloomer's debt and leave her with an additional 100,000 yuan, Willow contemplated starting a mobile food business. The current trend of mobile food trucks seemed profitable. She envisioned buying one and setting up a stall near a university, selling egg pancakes and spicy hot pot. Despite the challenges of weather conditions, she believed it could be a lucrative venture. Moreover, she hoped that Bloomer had learned from this experience. He seemed genuinely devastated, spending days unable to lift his head. One night, Willow even caught him secretly crying on the sofa. In her heart, Willow planned for the future, considering Men and Ian's marriage. Without a father figure, others might look down on Ian. Although their relationship was not particularly close, Bloomer's presence meant the family was still intact. For these reasons, Willow made up her mind to sell the clothing store. The handover of the clothing store went relatively smoothly. 2 young girls took over, and the real owner didn't appear, claiming to be working on a store exhibition and adding a telemarketing model. Willow couldn't understand the terms they used. On the day of the transfer, Willow felt heartbroken. After all, she had run the store for over a decade, and every corner held sentimental value. Caressing the clothes, tears threatened to fall. The thought of transitioning from a thriving boutique owner to a mobile food vendor pushing a small cart made her feel the harshness of life. Amidst the difficulties, there was a glimmer of hope. Her son Ian called, announcing that he had received a scholarship and had a high chance of winning an award in a school project. Ian spoke with excitement and satisfaction on the phone, adopting a somewhat mature tone, comforting his mother not to overburden herself. He assured her that he had grown up, and in this family where his father was absent, he would take charge. Listening to Ian's words filled Willow with both pride and heartache. After selling the store, Willow didn't immediately repay Bloomer. She wanted him to genuinely reform before helping him settle the debt. Uncharacteristically, she told the 2 people demanding payment that Bloomer hadn't given her the money yet, and besides, he hadn't written a guarantee, so they would have to wait a few more days. Surprisingly, the 2 were understanding and didn't press her too much. One of them even said reassuringly, "Big sister, take your time. Taking care of your family comes first." It was rare to see debt collectors being so amicable, as if they were not there to collect a debt but to mediate a marriage. In gratitude, Willow treated them to a meal at the lamb soup restaurant across the street, acknowledging that life was tough for everyone. Bloomer quickly wrote the guarantee and made solemn promises about his future behavior. Although Willow knew men sometimes spoke empty words, at least he had fulfilled the formalities. Just as she was preparing for the next steps in her life, a rare opportunity presented itself. During those days at home, Willow often found herself scrolling through her phone, researching information. Bloomer asked her what was going on, and at first, she didn't say anything. Bloomer kept pressing her, and she finally mentioned her close friend who had recently returned from abroad to work for a major domestic company undergoing restructuring. The company urgently needed funds and was seeking contributions from the public with a frighteningly high return rate, with profits nearly halved every 10 days. Bloomer dismissed it, saying, "Do you really believe in these scams targeting kids?" Willow shook her head and said, "It's not about belief. Look, these past few days, I tried investing 50,000, and just now, it came back as 80,000. She showed her phone to Bloomer, who initially didn't take it seriously but soon became intrigued after taking a closer look. The company seemed legitimate, and the returns were plainly displayed on Willow's phone. Bloomer could see that it was a common practice for some large companies to engage in such financial activities. This seemed like an unexpected windfall. Willow discussed with Bloomer, "I'm thinking of putting all the money from selling the store into this. Taking a risk, who knows, we might make a fortune. We could buy a house in Dongxing Garden, and our lives could change forever." Bloomer's eyes flickered as he said, "Let's make it clear. You put the money in, and no matter what, your friend has to guarantee a safety net for you. Also, when you make money, you need to pay me back quickly." Willow squinted at Bloomer and said, "You better think this through." Bloomer nodded confidently, "You can trust me, my money is your money." His words amused Willow. As expected, after investing all her money, the so-called friends company collapsed. When Willow tearfully turned to Bloomer for help, he was on the verge of a breakdown. Willow cried, "Bloomer, you're the only one I have left. My store is gone, and I have no money. You have to help me figure something out." Bloomer, disgusted, pushed Willow away, his frustration evident. He angrily shouted, "Get lost. You're a spendthrift woman. No money left, and you're still here. What are you doing?" Willow left the house in tears, but as soon as she turned the corner, she started to laugh. There was really nothing to hold on to in that home. If it weren't for the debt collectors taking pity on her and revealing the truth, she would have continued to suffer in Bloomer's web of lies. Bloomer's tales of rewarding anchors and gambling were all deceptive nonsense. The truth was that he had another woman outside, spending all his money on her. However, she wasn't satisfied and set her sights on Willow's clothing store. She demanded Bloomer give her the store, and in return, she would marry him without any qualms. A man bewitched by a demon is bound to speak lies. From beginning to end, it was all a trap set by Bloomer. He calculated that Willow would sacrifice for this home, counted on her to repeatedly show mercy, and meticulously planned to drain her completely. He had long grown tired of her. If he had money back then, he would never have married Willow, a woman with a child. When men are heartless and greedy, they become the vilest creatures on earth. The two debt collectors were hired by Bloomer, but unfortunately, they weren't professionals. Moreover, they still had a conscience. In the end, after hesitating for a long time, they told Willow the truth after the last meal of lamb soup. In this step-by-step ordeal, Willow felt not only a sense of trepidation but also a growing sense of disgust. The person beside her was the one who shared a bed with her. Although it wasn't her first marriage, Willow always believed there was some affection between her and Bloomer. Now it seemed that the sweet talk during their courtship was nothing but hot air. The 30,000 yuan given to Willow indeed had 2/3 borrowed by Bloomer, and the remaining 1/3 came from the woman he was involved with. Bloomer's original plan was to make a quick profit. When Willow received the money, she would give it to the two debt collectors. After getting the money back on this end, he would pay off the high-interest loan. The duration wasn't long, and the interest wasn't exorbitant. He bit the bullet and took out the high-interest loan. He even considered Willow's initial proposal of investing in the classmates' company. If it succeeded, he could extract a few more thousand from Willow to please the other woman. Even if it failed, he could at least recoup the principal. So, in a moment of carelessness, he agreed. However, he never anticipated that Willow would discover the truth. Before leaving the city, Willow took a glance at the old house and visited the clothing store. The old house belonged to Bloomer, and she had no connection to it. As for the clothing store, she had already sold it to the other woman, so she didn't feel any regret. At the old house, bold red characters were written on the wall, demanding that Bloomer repay the money immediately, accompanied by a large exclamation mark. The clothing store was even more chaotic. Even from a distance, the amplified voice could be heard, urging Bloomer to repay the money quickly. Faint cries and commotion could be heard from inside the store. These were not the two fake debt collectors Bloomer had hired, these were people with real means. However, none of this concerned Willow anymore. She had to thank the two debt collectors. Sometimes she wondered, if those two hadn't told her the secret, would she have continued to endure, buying a small food cart and supporting Bloomer? Probably not. Evil deeds bear their consequences, and divine retribution is inevitable. The reason Willow set a trap for Bloomer by pretending the investment failed was to avoid trouble. Bloomer, a person like him, whether undiscovered as a fraud or exposed as a mad dog, was uncertain. She had to think about her and Ian's safety and didn't want to step into this mess. She planned to take the money and start a small business in the provincial capital where her son Ian lived. If, one day, Ian asked where the capital for the business came from, she would proudly tell him that his stepfather back then was a real late bloomer. He made a fortune, broke up with her, and went in search of love. Though it sounded like a myth, perhaps it could be taken as a joke.